Think you've seen every type of submarine? Think again. Throughout history, engineers, admirals, and occasionally just very confident madmen have looked at the ocean and said, we can do weirder, and they delivered. We are talking about submarines powered by steam, submarines armed with cannons, and one submarine so small its pilot was basically a human missile. Make sure you stick around until the very end because the last entry on this list is so catastrophically over-engineered it makes modern nuclear submarines look like bath toys. I'm your host, and this is Ultimate Machinery. Smash that subscribe button, ring the bell, and let us know in the comments which of these insane submarines you would actually dare to dive in. Let's roll. Number 1, the Intelligent Whale. You won't believe this exists, but in 1863, the United States Navy commissioned a hand-cranked iron submarine named the Intelligent Whale. It looked exactly like its name suggests, a bloated, riveted metal beast about 28 feet long, bobbing in the water with all the grace of a bathtub. The true magic was its crew of 13 men, who were expected to physically crank the propeller by hand while submerged, in the dark, hoping the hull held. But it possessed a fatal flaw. It took so long to dive that it was essentially useless in combat. The Navy tested it nearly 40 times and never deployed it once. Today, it sits in the National Guard Militia Museum in New Jersey, still looking deeply smug about surviving. Weirdness. Meter 8 out of 10, practicality 1 out of 10. Number 2, the K-class steam submarine. Britain's K-class submarine of 1916 is proof that not every bad idea gets stopped before it becomes a very large, very expensive bad idea. The Royal Navy decided to build submarines powered by steam boilers, the kind of engine that requires furnaces, funnels, and about 20 minutes to cool down before diving. The true magic was their sheer size. At over 300 feet long, they were the largest submarines of their era. But they possessed a fatal flaw so obvious it is almost artistic. Steam submarines must seal their funnels before submerging, and the K-class crews regularly flooded the boiler rooms doing exactly this. In the infamous Battle of May Island in 1918, K-class submarines collided with each other in the dark and killed over 100 British sailors, with no enemy involvement whatsoever. Weirdness meter 9 out of 10. Friendly fire risk 10 out of 10. Number 3, Flirt, the Surcouf. France built the Surcouf in 1929, and it is mathematically terrifying. This was a submarine cruiser, a vessel so conflicted about its identity that it carried both torpedo tubes and an 8-inch twin-gun turret on its deck. It was over 360 feet long, crewed by 150 men, and featured a small float plane stored in a watertight hangar. The true magic was its ambition. France genuinely believed the submarine could also function as a surface warship, but it possessed a fatal flaw in that the gun turret made the vessel slow to dive, noisy underwater, and nearly impossible to hide. The Surcouf disappeared in 1942 under circumstances still disputed to this day as weirdness. Meter 9 out of 10, identity crisis rating 10 out of 10. Number 4, the Kaiten, Japan's Kaiten, introduced in 1944, was not a submarine in any traditional sense. It was a Type 93 torpedo, already a weapon of mass destruction, modified to fit a single human pilot inside. The true magic was its guidance system, a person. The pilot would steer it at full speed directly into an enemy ship with a theoretically escapable hatch that in practice was almost never used. But it possessed a fatal flaw beyond the obvious. Kaitens were notoriously difficult to control at speed, and several were lost to mechanical failure before ever reaching a target. Approximately 80 pilots died in training alone. Today, preserved Kaitens can be found at the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo. Weirdness meter 7 out of 10. Chance of surviving the mission 0 out of 10. Number 5, the USS Argonaut. The USS Argonaut, commissioned in 1927, was the United States Navy's only purpose-built mine-laying submarine, and it was absolutely enormous. At over 380 feet long, it displaced more water than some surface destroyers. The true magic was its capacity. It could carry 60 naval mines in dedicated tubes at its stern, a capability no other American sub possessed. But it possessed a fatal flaw. Its sheer size made it slow, difficult to maneuver, and nearly impossible to hide from aircraft. In January 1943, Japanese destroyers sank the Argonaut off New Britain with the loss of all 102 crew members. It remains the largest American submarine ever lost in combat. Weirdness, meter 6 out of 10. Target visibility 10 out of 10. Here is the terrifying truth about everything you have seen so far. Every single one of these submarines was approved, funded, and built by committees of intelligent, credentialed engineers and naval officers. The Intelligent Whale passed a Navy review board. The K-class received full Royal Navy backing. The Surcouf had a budget bigger than most surface ships. And yet, somewhere between the blueprint and the ocean, reality stopped being consulted. Drop a comment below. Which of these 5 would you have been brave enough or foolish enough to actually serve on? Number 6, Le Plongeur France strikes again. Le Plongeurs, launched in 1863, was the first submarine in history powered by a mechanical engine rather than human muscle. It used compressed air stored in massive tanks to drive a reciprocating engine, and it was genuinely revolutionary. The true magic was the concept, a self-propelled underwater vessel decades before the internal combustion engine made such things routine. But it possessed a fatal flaw so fundamental it is almost poetic. It had no effective way to maintain depth. The compressed air system created surges of power that sent the submarine bobbing up and down like a cork, making controlled navigation essentially impossible. It was retired after brief trials and now rests in the Musée de la Marine in Paris. Weirdness, meter, 7 out of 10. Depth control rating, 1 out of 10. Number 7, HMS Thetis. A HMS Thetis launched in 1939 and sank the same year before the war even started during a routine diving trial in Liverpool Bay. The cause was staggering in its simplicity. A torpedo tube test cock was blocked with enamel paint, causing a crew member to incorrectly believe the tube was empty. It was not. 99 men were trapped on the bottom, only 4 escaped. The true magic, or if one can call it that, was what happened. Next, the Navy refloated the submarine, renamed it HMS Thunderbolt, and sent it back into service. It was sunk again in 1943, this time by the Italians. Same submarine, twice lost. Weirdness meter 8 out of 10. Luck rating 0 out of 10. Submarines have historically killed more of their own crews than any other warship type. The machines on this list are extreme examples, but they reflect a pattern. The pressure to innovate combined with the pressure of actual water created engineering decisions that looked reasonable on paper and catastrophic in practice. If you are enjoying this deep dive, this pun absolutely intended, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Number 8, the Alpha class. The Soviet Alpha class submarine, Project 705, first launched in 1971, was the fastest attack submarine ever built. It could reach 45 knots submerged, faster than most torpedoes of its era. The true magic was its liquid metal reactor, cooled by a lead bismuth alloy that allowed an extraordinarily compact and powerful propulsion system. But it possessed a fatal flaw that haunted every deployment. If the liquid metal coolant ever solidified, which it did during port stays, the entire reactor core was essentially ruined. Crews had to keep the reactors running constantly, even in harbor, at enormous cost. The Soviets built 7 of them and retired all 7 within 20 years. Weirdness meter 9 out of 10. Maintenance nightmare rating 10 out of 10. Number 9, the Illuminaut, built in 1964 by Reynolds Metals. Yes, the aluminium company. The Illuminaut was the world's first deep-sea research submarine constructed entirely from aluminium alloy. It could dive to 15,000 feet, a depth most steel-hulled vessels of its era could not survive. The true magic was its material. Aluminium is lighter than steel and proved remarkably resilient under deep ocean pressure, but it possessed a fatal flaw in the form of operating costs, so ruinous that no institution could afford to run it long term. It was retired in 1971 after just 7 years of service and now sits on permanent display in Richmond, Virginia. Weirdness, meter 7 out of 10. Corporate submarine energy 10 out of 10. Number 10, Courier, the Chiton Type 4. You thought the original Chiton was extreme. The Type 4 variant, developed in late 1944, was a scaled-up version with a larger warhead, greater range, and a hull so big it could theoretically be launched from a modified aircraft carrier submarine. It is mathematically terrifying. The true magic was its theoretical payload, enough explosive force to cripple a battleship outright. But it possessed a fatal flaw. The war ended before a single Type 4 was deployed in combat. The engineering was real. The ambition was real. The target never arrived, several preserved. Examples remain in Japanese naval museums. Weirdness, meter 10 out of 10, timing, rating 0 out of 10. Every submarine on this list was built by people who genuinely believed they were solving a problem. Some were right about the problem and catastrophically wrong about the solution. Some were visionaries decades ahead of manufacturing reality. And some, frankly, should have been stopped much earlier by someone willing to ask a very basic question. What happens if this goes wrong underwater? The ocean has never been forgiving of that kind of overconfidence, and it never will be. Modern submarines are quieter, deeper, and deadlier than anything on this list, but they are also built on the lessons written by every disaster you just watched. Hit subscribe for more incredible machines and engineering stories you won't believe are real.